Hello, dear viewers, friends, and all that. This is TVT, and welcome to another episode of ARK Creature Feature. Today's episode will feature another modded creature courtesy of the man, the myth, the legend himself, Garuga, the Acrocanthosaurus. This is a dinosaur best described as what happens when you force an owl and a rex to do the fusion dance and then go, that, but louder. For those of you that are new to this series, this is where I'll be covering this creature's base stats, abilities, where to find one, how to tame them, and ways you can use them to improve your experience in game in ARK Survival Ascended. I'll also be talking about my opinions on ARK's take of this creature, and then give the final score based on all these categories from 1 to 10. And remember that this Acrocanthosaurus is not the historical fossilized one that existed in real life. This is a species modeled after it and genetically modified according to the game's lore, so at best it's an artificial evolution. Sort of like a dog, but, you know, meaner and more bird-like. But anyway, comparing the two apart from in-game abilities that might represent something that it did in real life doesn't make any sense, so I'll avoid that. So we're not going to talk about the fact that, like most creatures, this thing is oversized. Now, before we go any further, if you enjoyed this video and find it useful, go ahead and give this video a like. Be sure to comment and stomp that subscribe button to please the algorithm gods, and spread this video across the platform. It helps out a lot, and I greatly appreciate the support. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss it when a new video comes out from me. Alright, now that we've taken care of that, let's dive in. Oh boy, the Acrocanthosaurus is one of those creatures that you absolutely should tame if you're playing with mods. They are scary good, especially against smaller creatures. But don't take my word for it. Check out these stats. So to start us off, we've got 1100 base HP, 500 base stam, 150 oxygen, 3000 food, which is, you know, some of these are very typical for most creatures, 700 weight, and then, I've seen some conflicting sources on this, 55 damage on the base damage on the bite attack, and then 95 on the stomp attack. And when Tame, these do get a buff. We'll not going to bore you with that because you can see it on the screenshot that'll be right there a few seconds ago, so be sure to go check that out as well. You know, we put these up for a reason. It's also important to remember that when we're talking about numbers, as always, I am referring to just the level 1 base stats of the creature. What you will run into will be higher level and therefore stronger, so the numbers won't match up, but the math itself does. Just follow that little chart that's there, and you'll hopefully be able to understand it. But the whole reason why we do level 1 is to understand mostly the base damage. Before you take into account the melee percentage that would add on to it, and then resistances. So that's the damage it would be doing in a perfect situation at level 1. Alright, let's move on to this thing's abilities, and oh dear. This is going to take a hot minute. The Acrocanthosaurus has a lot of abilities. Oh boy. Alrighty, let's have a look. By the way, much like with the Rhinognatha, this thing has a handy-dandy help UI on the right side of the screen, which shows you what each of these abilities are and how to use them. Feel free to pause this video at any point, and as long as I'm writing an Acrocanthosaurus, you should be able to see it, because I don't turn it off. Alright, let's move on. The bite. This is the standard left-click bite attack that every single predatory dinosaur gets. With base stats at level 1, it will do about 55 damage from a wild creature. I've seen a conflicting source that says 50, but we'll go with 55 because I'm always going to assume this thing is stronger than I think it is. Other than that, it's about the same as every other bite attack in the game. Sometimes the animation will have it nudge or swipe with its head, but it's the same attack and does the same damage. Stomp. You ever feel like the creatures in this game just don't really throw their weight around properly? Have you ever wanted to punish your enemies by turning them into flesh pancakes? Well, now you can with the trusty right click. The Acro Stomp does a whopping base 95 damage. Holy shit. It does have a cooldown, by the way, but this attack has a decent AoE And if anything tries to get under your feet, they're going to regret it very quickly, and then not, because they'll be dead. The smaller the creature, the more damage it does to them. This is calculated by drag weight. This does mean that the Acro really shines against smaller creatures, but make no mistake, it'll do very well against enemies of all shapes and sizes. Roar. You press control, creature roars loudly. That's it. Moving on. Shield stance. Alrighty, here's where things start to get a little interesting. Pressing C triggers the Acro's shield stance, where it will immediately turn to the side and start walking towards the enemy. It's pretty slow in this state, and while its left-click attack changes to a head bash, and it does a lot less damage than before, you might now be wondering why the hell would you ever use this? So you can style on the enemy by walking sideways at them? Well, you can do that, but that's not why you would use it. You may do reduce damage, but you do a lot of knockback, and you also take far less damage. I'm not sure what the math is on that, but as you'll see for yourself, it is a lot of reduced. The damage reduction is immense. And this lets the Acro put that very high base HP to work with resistance and just soak damage for days. At high level, a good HP Acro is an absolute tanking master that will make the Stegosaurus proud. Don't mind that, that's just my can of root beer. However, this mode has a hidden secret. You may notice the red bar at the bottom of your screen above the hotbar filling up as you take damage while in shield stance. That's the adrenaline meter, and when it fills up completely, this thing opens up a can of free-range, non-GMO, organic whoop-ass. Please note, you don't need to be in the shield stance to fill up this meter, but this is the best way to do it. Just let things hit you and let it fill up. And once it does, prepare to go Super Saiyan. Just give it a second here. We'll get there eventually. And any minute now. There we go. Once the bar is full and you're in shield stance, you can press spacebar and enter your rage mode. In this state, the Acro gets a cosmetic buff in the form of a red glow underneath its skin, which looks awesome, especially at night. And it takes a massive buff to its movement speed and offensive capabilities. It does lose the defensive buff from shield stance, but sometimes the best defense is a good offense. Not only do you get a damage buff, but your stomp attack now will hit 3 times instead of 1, doing increased damage on each successful hit. However, this rage mode does not last long, so make it count. Okay, let's talk about where you find these things, but before we can do that, I need to establish that this dinosaur does have variants. Back on ARK Survival Evolved, we had the regular, Scorched, and ARK Acros. I would suspect that all of these will be true, will be true and will appear here on ARK Survival Ascended, but none of them are here now. But none of them are currently here. However, it's still important to mention because there is a new variant available, the Ascended Acrocanthosaurus. As I understand it, this thing has a different pattern and it's rarer, but I don't think there's any meaningful differences mechanically apart from that. Yeah. Anyway, stay tuned because as part of the taming demonstration, I'm going to be spawning in one of these lovely beasties and we'll do a little side-by-side comparison. Now, where do you find the Acro? Well, go ahead and check out this. They tend to spawn in anywhere that has reasonably open areas. So, yeah, they'll just wander around, and when you find one, they'll also attack virtually anything. So they're not hard to spot, but you will generally hear them well before you even see them. And the Acro is a very loud creature that likes to announce its presence with a roar. So, you know, like the Hollywood stereotype of a predator and not an actual predator. Okay, so let's say you found your Acro, now what's next? If you want to tame your very own Acrocanthosaurus, I've got good news and bad news. As you're seeing here, The good news is that it's technically a knockout tame, and once down, this thing takes exceptional kibble or mutton as its preferred food, so there's nothing extravagant here. Should be pretty easy to handle. The bad news is, again, as you can see, that this is not a typical knockout tame in the sense that you cannot tranquilize it normally. To KO it, you need to have 4 things aside from its favorite foods. Firstly, you need a decent gun, preferably an assault rifle or pump-action shotgun like I have here. But it's personal preference. Secondly, you need narcotics and biotoxin. Both work, but biotoxin from harvesting Nidaria works better. Thirdly, you need 4 metal gateways and a large bear trap to make the standard Giga-type trap to box this thing in. Fourth and finally, you need balls of steel because to tame this thing, you need to shoot it or damage it as you are seeing here until it goes into shield stance, and then keep damaging it until it roars as it enters adrenaline mode. When it does that, you're going to run up to it and shove your hand in its mouth and give it force-feeded biotoxin. Yeah. It's metal and hardcore as hell. When you've successfully done it, the Acro will go into an animation where it kind of reels back, like so, chokes down the stuff, and then returns to shield stance, allowing you to rinse and repeat until it finally staggers and falls over. However, be careful here because it can do a false roar sometimes. Also, I highly recommend using the aforementioned gate method. You don't have to, and it can bug out and target your structures, which it does do here. But the main reason to use that trap is that it keeps the Acro from shield bashing you unless you get too close and launches you away. That matters because if the Acro goes too long without taking damage, it will go back to its normal stance. That's an issue because without that damage resistance in play, it can die from your attacks. Force feeding it the drugs will heal it, and if it does get too low, I recommend bringing it of course to consume, which should refill its HP considerably, though you will lose a good amount of the built-up torpor. Once this thing goes down, it will tame up just like any other knockout tame. Just watch that torpor meter and make sure you brought enough food. By the way, I do want to mention something here real quick. This particular Ascended Acrocanthosaurus was spawned in. And ordinarily, if that was the case, I wouldn't keep it. But since it was tamed legitimately, and for the purposes of this demonstration, I will hang on to it. And I'm probably not going to use it much anyway, so it's just going to sit in my dino storage unless I do need it for something. I don't know. Maybe it'll do something on Scorched Earth. Not really sure. I cannot breed it, by the way, with the Acro that I tamed in my playthrough of ARK Survival Ascended, because that Acro is a normal Acrocanthosaurus, not an Ascended one, so yeah, not how that works. So basically, it's not that useful to me, which is another reason why I'm okay with it, with all that being done. But while we've got this thing down, let's go ahead and talk about what you can use it for. So, now that you've tamed, perhaps bred, maybe even made some mutated Acros, highly recommend that, by the way, let's talk about what these things are good for. Again, what aren't they good for? It's the Acrocanthosaurus. If you know Garuga and ARK additions, you know how damn good this thing is. It's an absolutely reliable tank with its shield stance. It will shrug off damage in PvE and in PvP, and which can be deadly during a raid, because I forgot to mention earlier that its shield bash can actually damage metal structures. So all those turrets it's soaking, it can then retaliate and destroy them along with the metal gate. Yeah, this thing is nasty. This has use against alphas and bosses as well, but if you're going to go up against alphas and bosses, this thing is going to do just fine by itself. Well, with an army anyway. It's an absolute monster against almost any creature that lacks resistance to its attacks, especially if they're smaller than it is. A well-trained, mutated army of Acros will obliterate bosses. Go check my Fjordur playlist and you'll see what I mean. These things are nasty. These things are probably one of the best boss-killing creatures you could ask for outside of vanilla, especially after buffs from a Yudi and or the Dinotherium. Needless to say, they are as great at killing alphas and bosses as they are at gathering meat. The only area where I think they struggle is against faster creatures that will run away from you because they are not very fast themselves. Also, hard-hitting, agile aerial creatures can really give them the slip. They also can struggle when there's status problems, so bear that in mind. Alrighty, I'm a level with you guys right now. I love this thing, and again, if you see my Fjordur Let's Play, you know that I love it, and you know why. It's definitely one of my favorite modded, if not my personal favorite modded creature, at least from Garuga, even after so many newer ones. The Acrocanthosaurus is absolutely a must-tame in my book if you play with mods. In addition to its amazing mechanics and stats, it also just looks great. The original look was fine, albeit maybe a little bit too scrawny. Seriously, get the original one a sandwich. The TLC gives this thing some much-needed chonk and lips to hide its teeth when its mouth is closed, which strangely makes it even more intimidating, and yet also makes it look like it has the mass to be a real animal of this size. The patterns are beautiful, the variations are great, and the design is still sleek enough, but now there's real power behind it. Surprising no one, I'm going to give this creature a solid 10 adrenal glands that make you go Super Saiyan out of 10. Well, what can I say? It's that good of a creature. Maybe I need to change my standards. Damn, too many 10s lately. Also, shout out to Garuga yet again for the work that went into making and then remaking this astounding creature. Alrighty, I think that covers everything. I hope you liked I hope you liked this ARK creature feature showcasing the ferocious Acrocanthosaurus. If you enjoyed this video and found it useful, do me a solid and hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and please the algorithm gods so that this video spreads across the platform. I greatly appreciate it. Just as an aside, I will be going over other creatures as well in the future, though it will take some time as I need to focus on getting ready for boss fights currently on this playthrough. So, with that being said, this has been TVT. I'm signing out, and I'll catch you on the next episode of ARK Creature Feature. Peace! Ooh, maybe not so peaceful after that. Alright, see you guys on the next one.